to our panel. I'm just gonna look at you for a second. I'm just so excited. Look at you all. Welcome. We are here to talk about gingers and robots, and that's it. Those two things. So let me tell you about how this is gonna go today. The plan, I'll have the lovely panelists introduce themselves, names, pronouns, and a couple of blocks that they want to talk about today, or like bring forward. I'll ask questions, we'll talk about them, and then we'll turn it over to you guys, and you can ask us questions. Sound good?
Yeah.
Sound good? Great. That's like how a lot of panels work, but I figured I'd just say it out loud. And, you know, we're here to talk about gender, we're here to talk about robots. How many times I can say that? But we're talking about us, right? We're talking about humans, we're talking about bodies and the parts and the not human parts. So the invitation is to be mindful of the other humans in the room, the other cyborgs in the room, the other gremlins in the room, about the language you're using, about the sort of assumptions or whatever that you're making. And also, we're autonomous individuals and you can't control what anybody else does, so so please take care of yourselves as well. Doors. I don't know, that's a door. You could
I don't think you're supposed to use that.
Don't use that door. Those are doors.
Bust into the next panel.
Yeah. So let's take care of ourselves and take care of each other. Deal? Yeah. Amazing. On that note, we have been chatting, our lovely panelists, kind of about how we wanted the conversation to go, and like we're using bot as sort of a catch-all term, right? I don't know how that's been going in other panels, but equal parts HAL 9000, Gort, Janet from The Good Place.
Not a robot.
Not a robot.
But she's attractive.
She's welcome though. But not a girl either. Gender robots. There's tricky bits, right? Like in the same vein of how do we take care of each other and how do we say the nice things and the truthful things. Cyborgs. Tricky. So yeah, Lee, would you? I would
Should
love
we
to say.
introduce ourselves?
I would kind of like to frame the conversation and then introduce ourselves. If that's okay. Yeah.
So we had a whole conversation in email before this panel about, are we going to talk about cyborgs? Because cyborgs are real and they may be in this room with you right now. Statistically, they probably are. And equating cyborgs and robots gets a little hairy that way because then we are talking about real actual people who have real actual relationships to gender. We eventually came down on the side of we are going to have to talk about cyborgs anyways because we cannot have this panel in 2026 and not talk about Murderbot. But we're just going to acknowledge that this section of the Venn diagram gets very complicated. And that there are like nature versus nurture arguments to be had as well. Like, were you raised as a cyborg in a company plant that wants you to murder people for money? Or were you just a human being walking around that then had to get an implant? And that there are nuances to those things that hopefully we will sensitively and delicately get into as the panel goes on. How's that?
That was perfect.
If I remember correctly, there is a psychology of cyborgs panel.
Just happened.
That was mine. It was at noon. It was recorded. None of the tech worked. I don't know what to do.
It was incredible.
So part of the deal we made of taking care of each other and taking care of ourselves includes this. Still deal? Deal? Great, amazing. Now let's introduce ourselves. Hi, I'm Jules. Hi. Look at you. I use they, them pronouns. My friend and I have a podcast project called Genderbots, where we do this all the time. So I was really excited to bring this to our robot-loving friends.
My name is Naomi Kritzer, she, her pronouns. I wrote a couple of books called Catfishing on Catnet and Chaos on Catnet that feature a a genderless AI, and several non-binary human characters. I would hoping to talk about Murderbot and maybe also Lyda Morehouse's character Paige, which was a gender fluid AI from the early 2000s.
Books AI was so much more wholesome than real AI.
Oh my god, I love fictional AI and I hate like what we call AI in the real world. Fucking.
I am Lee Brontide. I am both an actual for realsies therapist and also an author of science fiction books. I'll tell you right now, this is not the name that my therapy license is under. But it's what I write science fiction under. Any pronouns, my gender is no thank you.
What bots do you want to talk about?
The one that pops up for me first is actually, and here's a little bit of a old one, but LOL from Next Generation made little like 9-year-old Lee very upsetty spaghetti. I'm still not over it 30 years later, so let's talk about LOL.
Hi, I'm Jamie Riedesel. I don't have anything published in genre, and my reason I'm being here is because I'm also trans. I've played with a lot of gender, and I'm curious about the intersection of the way gender in language works, which is sort of a crafty thing for writing, because I'm talking in English. English does gender one way. Other languages do languages in different ways. And I know you have some specific experience. So this is going to be fascinating. And the thoughts I want to talk about are like the AIs in Defective Chambers novels. Those got some interesting stuff. And of course, the questionable content comic that's been going on the wrong ass time. They do some fun stuff in there. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Ellie, TG, and I use they, them pronouns. I am really interested in talking about Murderbot first and foremost as a character, and then also kind of connecting the conversation to other bots that I am not familiar with, because I'm a younger person, and I grew up with a lot of science fiction and fantasy, and from a very, very early age I decided that I was not doing the whole gender thing. And I think that was probably at least slightly influenced by the content that I was making.
Yeah. So we have a good chronological range of bots to talk about. Yeah, amazing. Well, let's talk about Murderbot, y'all. What is it we love about Murderbot? Why do we have so many feelings about it? Thank you. Ellie, what do you think?
I really like Murderbot as a concept for a series and also as a character. I think the name Murderbot in of itself is such a good, it's a very good hook, and it's also not what it wants to be called. Because it's kind of the closest thing to a name that it allows itself to have, but it's also from a place of self-hatred. And there's a lot of interesting conversation to be had about person versus thing and how it is completely uninterested in being a person, but also uninterested in being a thing, a tool for others to use.
I would say it's very interested in being a person.
It's
But
not interesting being a human.
Yeah. Humans are squishy.
Yeah, I think that one of the things I like about Murderbot is that it's doing a really more nuanced, complicated dance around being an object or being a person. And where Murderbot is drawing those lines is not where we usually see those lines being drawn in other media, and I think it feels so real because it's so idiosyncratic, which is how real people usually behave. Like, oh, I don't like this, but that other thing is that's within that is still okay because I have a feeling about that. And I think the way that it draws, I like that it is slowly embracing personhood, while remaining totally disinterested in a lot of the factors that we used to use to humanize robots, like sex and gender. It's sort of like, no, I would like the human rights, thank you. But like, you keep that other stuff away from me. I don't need that to be a person, except in its sweet, dysfunctional own way of framing all of that.
I'll say that one of the things that it rejects that I think is really interesting is the name that is used by others. Because as you noted, it uses the name Murderbot for itself, but that's not what it wants anyone else to call it. And when asked for something to call it, it's like, it doesn't really want to offer anything up and then settles on SecUnit, which is what it was called by the company, which is just really...
Except when it uses its hard code, like
Right.
server.
Other machine intelligences can call it by its effectively its real name.
This is a form of residual identity, which is something I see in the trans community. It's like, some people do a hard cut between their names, like this is now my dead name, you call me that dead name, you're now dead to me, get out of my face. And there's some other people who just have this sort of crossfade interval, or this period of apathy. Yes, that's my name. I haven't found a better one. I just don't like it, whatever. And that's kind of where I see my empathy is with the Murderbot experience, is in that sort of residual identity. They don't know what they want to be called yet, because that's a hard question, really. And that works, sure, keep using it. It's a little icky, but I can live with it. I live with a lot of stuff right now.
It's almost like it's got a Wallet name.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that it chose.
Yeah.
In one of its first acts of rebellion.
I did really like the comment I saw on Tumblr from somebody who was like, sweetie, at most you're justified homicide bot. Everyone kills in self-defense and really had it coming.
I feel like we have to talk about 3.
Oh, yeah.
We gotta talk about 3 if we're talking about our buddy Murderbot. I love
Yeah.
him too. Precious being, who is named after its position in relation to other sec units, the relationship to which we will literally never have clarity on. And that's what, so far, it's just sort of like, well, just keep calling me that, I guess. And we don't know how much it really understands of what that means symbolically. But I'm sure Holism will be happy to lecture it on this subject.
I don't want to spoil the new book because it came out very recently, but I really, really like what 3 decides to do with its self-determination. Really like it.
Just wait.
If you want to come up after the panel, we're going to talk about 3.
Then spoilers. Yeah. Well, and then like this idea of like a relational name of like, well, this is what positions me in relation to other sec units. This is where it places me in relation to.
And to Bearish Estranza.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this was also my position in my unit in the job that I'm not exactly doing anymore.
Yeah.
And that's sort of this leftover artifact that it's so far still pretty comfortable holding on to, as far as we know.
Yeah.
We don't have a 3 point of view story.
Yet.
I mean, I'm sure AO3 does.
There's a fanfic I really liked where 3 is just experimenting with different pronouns and switching pronouns monthly. So at the beginning of the story, 3 is using she, her pronouns, and then the month switches and it starts using, I forget, but not she, her, neopronoun of some kind.
Well, and so where does that put, like, now that it's a TV show and they cast a human actor, presumably?
Well, that's kind of the only kind of actor we have available.
Is it?
I'm not calling the other ones actors. I'm not doing that.
Fair.
This is an artistic choice that the author had available to her. Like Martha didn't have to gender the character in text. But as soon as you get a visual medium, you start drawing on cinematography and everything else, and you start getting default genders thrown in, which is a very different thing. And
The
this
rate
is
of
what this is.
misgendering Murderbot online skyrocketed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now that we have a visual language for that, this is adaptation at its most complicated.
I would just say I have to speak out on this because I saw a fair number of people being like, well, they cast a guy to play a murder bot. And I'm like, well, non-binary people don't have a physical thing that you need to associate with us. A non-binary person can look like anything. And I've had really sad conversations actually with some non-binary folks who are like, oh, but I'm like this big bearded dude, like I can't be non-binary, I could never like go by they, them. And I'm like, yes you can, I'll call you whatever you want, I don't care. But that doesn't stop people from seeing this physical form and it's he. Not the giggle.
I do appreciate that a lot of the Finnish communities are really vigilant. If you misgender Murderbot, you will get corrected very quickly.
Plus, I think like we all wanted to talk about Murderbot. Like there is something there that we want to get into and connect with and whatever. So nerds be nerdy.
It's a very relatable character in this day and age.
So really there, yeah.
Bless that mess.
That's that mess. Because all Murderbot, if you're not as familiar with Murderbot, all Murderbot wants to do is watch its stories.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all it says it does, but every time there's a human, it's just like, oh, darn it, I have clients again.
I have my
Murderbot, that's too many clients. Put some of those clients down.
I want to have clients, but I guess I have to. You know, they need me.
That one looked sad, I have to keep it now.
I can't be fast enough to go sploot. Of course I have to take care of them.
That one is soft and has colorful hair.
Yeah.
You can't put that one down.
And that Murderbot attributes that kind of care with being human too. Like, no, can't. I'm just here to murder.
I think it is also very partly worried about being drawn into aspects of humanness that it doesn't want. Like, oh, if I'm human, I'm gonna have to do all this like physical touch stuff that I don't want to do. These complicated ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really love the fact that the humans around it like learn what it wants and will try to respect its boundaries. I really appreciate the fact that like one of the characters at the end of the second podcast is like, can I hug you? And okay, this is for you. And then that character hugs himself. That was like really lovely.
That's nice.
Yeah.
An important thing if you are not a Murderbot fan to know is that this is a partially, largely robotic character with zero poker face. Yeah, it thinks it does, but it does not. So, like, they're like, do you want to come in and be part of it?
It doesn't have its helmet, you know?
Right, it wants its helmet, which is so, like, if you compare that to, like, your more classic data model, where it's like the mostly kind of the flat expression, but trying to be more expression and more human. I think that change is part of what makes Murderbot so fresh and appealing.
Yeah. They need to go have an emotion. Like it's this onerous thing that I have to put up with, you know? It's very different from other ones we've seen.
I want to have a panel about Murderbot from a therapist point of view so bad, you guys.
Sorry, next week.
Do it.
Yeah. Well, and then we throw art into the picture.
Yeah.
Oh, let's talk art, yes.
Let's talk art. Murderbot made of flint. Kind of.
Mutual administrative assistance.
Who people misgender a lot less on the internet.
Yeah.
Because it's got a spaceship body. We're counting art as a robot, right? I mean, it's a robot you can ride in. That's no different than a Gundam. With pathfinders that may or may not explode.
I would say that the voice I hear in my head for art is the Doctor from Voyager. Yeah, that sort of dry, sarcastic, I know better than you kind of voice, just sort of talking very calmly to the humans is very reassuring, and meanwhile that archness is there if you look for it. It's delightful.
You are incorrect, Iris. I can bomb the colony.
I always hear like Siri.
Yeah, oh.
Like just the extremely smooth, you are incorrect, Iris. I can bomb the colony.
So many great possibilities. I'm really looking forward to the second season of the show.
But again, there's a gender component to that, right?
Absolutely.
Someone's getting their arm tired back there. Are we doing questions?
Might as well, yeah. I was trying to I got you, but, yes,
I'm
Fred.
sorry this is off topic, but you were talking about brought attention to emotions, and as somebody who is asexual, autistic, and non-binary, I see in media that oftentimes the only representation, even in the community kind of representation, is in robots because people see this being as they see, well, if we are making a non-human character, we obviously got to take with all the human things, which is obviously, sex, gender, and all these social things.
Yeah.
And I find it very interesting to see that we do claim them, but like, I especially often go, I would like to see a human character for once, be asexual, non-binary, or non-confused instead of just these characters that are coded as not being human. And I find that
Lee, tell us about your book.
Don't get me on that tangent. The books are here. I'm happy to talk after the panel. I don't want to spend my whole time marketing.
In relation to Ross, thinking of like emotions, like not understanding social cues, having their own set of rules, and having their own, being away from these human parts of the touch and the gender and the interfacing in other ways. And I just, that was very interesting.
I don't think we can repeat that whole thing.
No.
Someone want to do the gist?
Yeah, if I understand that correctly, as a agender autistic person, you find better representation in a lot of robotic presentations in media than you do in humans. And it'd be kind of nice to have a human out there that does that. Is that a good
Because
feedback?
some of the way that, asexual, aromantic, agender, autistic characters are coded as non-human because it's seen as such an essential human component of life.
Yeah.
And it'd be nice to have a human character so it feels less dehumanizing to have representation in media.
It's not fun when all of your representation comes from characters whose viability as a person is under question by the people around them. That's not super fun.
Get enough of that in real life.
Yeah.
So all of these movies and media that are like, who's a robot? Who passes?
So can I talk about LOL now?
Yeah.
Yes.
LOL, I remember this is just burned into my brain.
Who is LOL?
LOL is in Star Trek The Next Generation in whatever decade that was, the 90s I guess. Data decides to make another android and makes a sort of entirely gray, I guess the goal was androgynous, blank. And then says, okay, I made you, what, you get to pick your gender. I thought, oh, well, 9-year-old me or whatever, oh.
You can do that?
But then LOL was like, do I have to? And Data was like, well, you don't have to, but really no one's gonna know how to interact with you if you don't. So you should probably pick one of these because we're trying to basically be humans here. So you gotta pick a gender. And of course this also means that then we got the sex characteristics, and that's equated with the gender and all of that. And then she dies.
Of course.
Hey, they try and enslave her first.
Right,
Sorry.
but this very clear framing of gender is key to personhood, or you will not be treated adequately. You won't be treated adequately anyways, but that was just so explicit there that it really stuck in my little brain as like, do we have to though?
There's two things about that stick out as you describe it. One is that's a very early 90s approach to gender.
Yeah.
As someone who's doing her questioning in that period, yes, absolutely. It was, here's one, here's the other, there's nothing in between, pick one, okay? Go for it. And at the same time, just because in the 90s that was sort of a, what do you mean you get to pick?
Right, that was still like 90s progressive.
90s progressive,
Yes.
exactly. And doubt.
Kind of stuff in next gen, it's
I mean,
90s progressive.
Like the cultural context is a little different, okay? Looking at it back in time, it's like, oh, that was not good. Especially when you're talking about Murderbot with that plethora of neo-pronouns that got floating all over the place, where this conversation is very hard to have in that one.
Yeah. Yep. But I feel like that is sort of part of the trajectory where we're coming out of now, where we have what we've got now, which is Murderbot and Murder Books and I don't remember. Does your AI in the cat books have a name?
Cheshire Cat.
All it wants is cat pictures.
Well, and that speaks to, Ellie, the point you were making of like, a gendering of a mechanical thing takes it from a thing to a person.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, that's what it is. It's, at least in English, when I'm talking about the language stuff, it is largely, not uniformly, one for inanimate objects. They is one for animate objects, animate subjects, grammatically speaking, generally. But there are absolutely people who claim it as a personal pronoun now. 30 years ago, this is much less likely. Just because language evolves, it happens over time. We're not speaking Old French right now for those very reasons. But when you're talking about fictional writers like several of us up here, writing about the future, we're going to be using these little linguistic tricks to try to bring the reader in, and it's always writing from the now. And adding gender to an inanimate object adds aspects of personhood, if not humanity, to them, depends on the concepts you're playing with in the work, just sort of subconsciously. And you have to be very careful with that. And Martha's very good at it, because Martha the people around Murderbot do not apply gender to Murderbot. You can very easily default gender someone with an it by having someone misgender them in the first scenes, in the first introduction, because first introductions are very important. And if someone has a placeholder identity tag, such as it or they, sometimes if one of the more dominant ones gets used, that shifts the mental model in your head of how this character works. One way it biases one way or the other. It's a very delicate balance when you're trying to write about this stuff. And it's something I pay attention to in my own work, just because I need to be careful what story I'm doing, what the biases my readers will have. And the biases my readers have in 2026 are going to be different than they are in 2046 in the future.
One of the things I did in this book here is I have, again, one of the fun fictional AIs who's gendered male for most of the book because the voice that it was given sounds masculine. And after kind of coming out as a person, one of its first things is like, hey, so could you stop doing that? They, them pronouns, please. So you can do, again, I don't think English is default set up to this, but you can do removal of gender as a humanizing thing, but I feel like that's not common. Not common yet.
I'm going to interrupt for a second and say, if you have a question, I will write it down and like I see you, and so you don't have to keep your hand up forever. But my friend who's had their hand up forever, you have a question.
I don't remember when it was. I think in the 2010s, John Scalzi wrote a couple of books with the main character, Chris.
Locked in.
Is it Locked In?
Oh,
Locked in.
Yeah.
Like-
Yeah.
And never gendered Chris. And when they had audiobooks done, they had two versions with two different voices. So
Okay,
you
that's
could
the kind of thing
choose
only
the
John Scalzi
masculine
does.
or the
Martha
feminine
Bell's probably cut at this point.
voice.
all my narrators are non-binary.
But so I thought that was, I think 2010s, and it was an interesting choice. And I think Scalzi did it partially just to say, I can write a whole novel and never tell you the gender of Chris.
Jamie in Cajun Preservation is the same thing.
Locked in is fascinating because it's the case of, it's a different variation of the ship brain problem, where you have a human body somewhere and you have the body everyone interacts with is not the one they actually have organically.
Yeah.
Only in this case, it's the threes, where it's the animatronic droids that come out and interact with everyone else, and it's not a ship. It's an actual someone in the room with you, and they can make chassis choices to gender them if they need to or not, as the case may be. So gender for someone who is who had locked in as early as Chris did, gender is not something as assigned as most of the rest of us had. So that's a different experience and one Scalzi paid attention to.
So I will note that where you run into problems with this is when your books get translated. Because if you write in the first person English, I and me are not gendered pronouns. But in many languages they are. And when my short story Cat Pictures Please has been translated a lot into a whole lot of languages. And a number of them, the translator got in touch and was like, so hey, what gender do I use for the narrator? Because, like, you have to pick one. And the answer that I generally give is this narrator is non-gendered. They have no gender. I don't know the best way to represent that in your language. You're the expert here. So, you know, like, you're gonna have to make a decision here because my stance is this character has no gender. And there are a few that like had some, came up with some pronoun type formulation in their language, and a whole lot just assigned the character a gender. And in 9 out of 10 cases, female, which I thought was interesting.
It's a cute character.
It's a cute character, it's helpful, and it, they used feminine sounding voices for Siri and Alexa, and so if you're, like, the online helper AI has sort of been societally gendered.
I heard that they had to invent new neopronouns for Murderbot in Japanese.
Oh, fun. Which is also interesting because a lot of the languages, like, table has a gender, and like
Right.
a lot of them are out, like, so why this one was such a hang-up? They were like, well, I don't know what to do.
So many hands.
So many
Everybody else
hands.
likes it.
Yes, you've.
Yes, thank you. I think probably the first example I can remember of robots in fiction that seemed to kind of defy gender norms, even if they ran into them, was Wall-E, oddly enough. Romance between 2 robots, and in Sexless, of course, one has the more masculine name, but oddly enough, the more feminine personality and job. Loves show tunes and works cleanup. The other with the more feminine name, trigger hair temper, is working scavenging. And it's got me to think since then, the vast majority of, especially early robot stories, tended to follow a humanoid form, except for something like Cow, where it was mostly a voice. But they were also made in subservience to human roles. They were rarely given their own role, even if they were made to look humanoid. And if it was just a basic human frame, it seems to have some, I think it might have something to do with the masculine builder construct, if that makes any sense, that they automatically assume something is male until they give it some kind of extension that we associate with female. Long hair, ribbons, boobs. And that seems to be the case with countless animated characters as well, that were just kind of the same male character with ribbon. And the reason I get into this is I'm wondering, can anyone figure out what was the earliest example, whether it was in film, books, or television, where the gender seemed at least ambiguous? Even if I can think of early characters with...
I mean,
Metropolis, I think, has some of that, believe it or not.
What?
Metropolis, even.
Wait, the original silent movie?
The original silent movie was...
Now that surprises me, because that character seemed very tied into feminine stereotypes as an alternative to the female, as a doppelganger to the female hero. Heroine. Well, we are talking about the same movie, right?
As far as I know, yes. I do know that Metropolis, a lot of the aesthetic in there was designed to get people out of their feelings, get people out of their context and start thinking about the future. But that's a way to talk about like design language when you're talking about motion pictures, and how do people design robots to interact with humans? And I'm not so sure that was necessarily ambiguous, but the fact that it was metal skin and eyes, which was a unique concept at the time, we're used to it now. We've been marinating in this for 100 years, but in the 1920s when that came out, that was a very new presentation, and that may have been dehumanizing enough to bring it into the realm of ambiguous.
You mean humanizing?
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, I'll say, I was thinking about the Star Wars robots while you were talking, because like, C-3PO and R2-D2 have pronouns. Like, they're both referred to as he. For no obvious reason. There's no reason that R2 is a boy. R2, well, yeah, C-3PO has a humanoid form, but not a gendered one particularly. And R2 doesn't have a humanoid form or a human voice.
Point of order. Queer communities have fully embraced both Wally and Eve and C-3PO and R2-D2 as queer couples.
I mean, that's bad.
Like, there's a lot of queer women, at least online, who see Wally and are like, yep, that's how queer female relationships go. It's like,
They're lesbians.
whoa, there's a femme. And similarly, C-3PO, like, people talk about like being very coded queer male, and so R2-D2 is the necessary dyke friend who gets everything done.
Also, there is also a machine intelligence that is gendered female in the Star Wars universe, which is the Millennium Falcon. And right, which we find out in Solo is like, was a blend of the original ship and a specific robot.
So raise that larger question of why have ships usually been given feminine names?
Well,
It's true, so many rabbit holes, but lovely friends have had questions for a while. You had your name?
I think you were before.
I wrote your name down first.
And there was a study that a few years back, and I'm really sorry that I don't remember the name of it, that showed that they do make Alexa and Siri and subservient AI, for lack of a better word, into the gender than female on purpose because it is a subservient role. To shake that up, how many of you have changed your Siri to a male voice?
I disable Siri because it's a dirty spy.
Well,
I don't know.
I checked all of the voices today.
I can't skip them. They're like Clippy. They're like, yeah, what gender was Clippy? Did Clippy have a gender?
But also, a lot of what I've heard is like the male options are male British voices.
Yes.
So there is still this thing of, on genderbots, we talk about like that there's this whole subsection of robots that is like effeminate British men. Butler, that is meant to be, or like Jules in AI, who's like.
They have to have, if it's a guy voice, they have to make it non-threatening by making it sound butlery. So that you're like the lord of the house.
Yeah.
So it's okay that the voice is telling you to turn left here.
Unless you change it to Cookie Monster mode, highly recommend.
I can see no distinct gender there.
Cookies, man.
Beloved local author Emma Bull's Bone Dance does a really interesting thing around passing and non-binariness because the main character just sort of lets people make assumptions and just doesn't fight whatever they guess, but never pushes anything gendered themselves. And it's very clearly like meant as like this is how this person precarity survives the world. So there is also like a cost of the danger to passing, and Murderbot also has as well. And so I think there's also a certain degree of like, how much are you willing to gamble to have a gender or not? And like highlighting that in the story is important.
On
Bone Dance was a long time ago, too.
On Tumblr, we call this my gender is wearing a red shirt at Target. I don't work here, but if I know where the electronics section is and you ask, I will tell you. Which is, my gender is often a red shirt at Target, which is just sort of like, you make whatever you want, and unless I have a reason to have a conversation with you, sure.
I feel like that's a very
common experience, even with people who are very vocally queer in their own spaces.
People vary widely on how much they like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know at least for like, as a young person, I'm very often gendered female, like just kind of in life. And I know a lot of my peers, regardless of like how they're gendered publicly, will kind of just roll with it and like smile and nod, because you really never know like
Is
what
this
you're
person
gonna
gonna be an
get-
asshole about
what
it?
you're gonna get into with it, especially as a young person who doesn't maybe have the resources, or like, I don't know, I'm perceived as like a teenage girl on the street. I'm not gonna.
That's a precarious thing to be perceived as.
Yeah, I'm not gonna argue with people on the street if they say anything.
Not worth the effort.
If this is something that you are not familiar with, non-binary folks vary the entire range of the spectrum to I am unmisgenderable. You're never wrong and you're never right, so it doesn't matter. Whereas other people, it really matters to them to be gendered correctly, just the same as it does to a lot of cis people. It really matters to them if they get misgendered. So just in case that was not on your horizon.
Yeah, when we were talking about design for robots, Blackmagic M88 by the creator who also gave us Ghost in the Shell, the main antagonistic robot in there is specifically mentioned as starting with this hip design. It's humanoid, and for whatever reason, the most efficient hip design was what we would consider female.
Curvaceous.
And the creator said, basically, well, I'll just go from there. It has no actual gender, but it's female shaped, including the long hair and vaguely makeup looking face. And that affects how people treat it.
This is an example of kind of what I was talking about earlier, where gender is sort of a humanizing influence of person making. Americans aren't very comfortable with it. They're growing more comfortable with they. They weren't nearly as comfortable with they as they were 20 years ago. I've seen that in my lifetime. And when you have something like that robot which is described, is the creator is in the process of making this thing. And they're making design choices along the way. From your description, I can see the creator, okay, here's a gender cue. So I'm just gonna kind of improv off of that for the rest of my design choices. And that is a very clear design process. Like I've done that myself in building characters, because sometimes I have kind of a role they are, and it takes a while for me to figure out what gender they need to be for whatever it is they do. And once I figure it out, the rest flushes out. A lot of authors deal with that. But yeah, that is a very true thing.
I know what purpose a character serves before I know anything about them as a character, like a
Yeah.
thing.
Happens to me a lot.
So going back to translations and going back to Murderbot, in Portuguese, a chair is feminine, but a sofa is masculine. And all adjectives also are gendered feminine or masculine. So what they did with the translation of Murderbot is when it's being referred to as a Murderbot, robot is masculine, so it gets the equivalent of he, him pronouns. But SAC unit is feminine. And so then it gets the she, her equivalent of pronouns. They did that on purpose.
A bunch of translators really had a chance to like. We're gonna get weird with this, and we're gonna do it on purpose.
Two things. One is, what do y'all think of the idea that Murderbot's name serves the same function for it as like a reclaimed slur? Because I noticed that it also calls other set units Murderbots as well.
It does. It does call other Murderbot set units, except for the ones that it doesn't like. Murderbot Plus, what are those called? Combat units. It doesn't call them murder bots, it calls them combat.
Even though they are much more murdery.
And comfort units are called sex bots.
You know what's interesting? It stopped calling them sex bots after finding out what the comfort units did, and mostly stopped.
I think actually it didn't stop until it freed that one comfort unit.
Oh,
And that's when it actually like fully stopped, like, oh, you're like a person.
I'd really like to see more comfort unit characters, and I think we're not getting them because I think Martha is just like, no, that's too dark.
You just don't want to put your brain some places. I know this.
I think not just as a reclaim server, the way I keep framing it in my head is Murderbot is trying to unlearn extreme end stage capitalism and trying to like negotiate not seeing people as things in the ways that it was previously taught you are supposed to see these people as things. And I think that it hasn't let go. It's unlearning it slowly in a very realistic fashion, which is enjoyable to me.
One of my favorite bits with Murderbot and its relation to like physical sex characteristics as like a airways like sex repulsed character. It is also very against the idea of having any of those parts at all. And I think a part of the way that it, at least very early on, defines itself is I do not have that. I am not made to interact with humans in this way, and I have no interest in interacting with humans in that way, and that is what allows me to be what I am.
I think it's protective to it.
It has a lot of contempt for sex bots at the beginning because it is repulsed by the idea of being human and having that experience of sexuality or gender.
It's also just kind of repulsed by bodies in general.
Yeah.
Like not even just the anything wet. Anything wet, anything leaking, anything liquid or squishy, it just doesn't sticky.
You friend in the back with the blue hat thing. Yeah.
Okay, so Japanese murder bot, I have the information. In Japanese, murderbot uses a genderless neopronoun, which is roughly pronounced haiki, which means, through its characters, because Japanese is really good at layering meaning, bad/evil robot, or this sort of second-rate humble company machine, as in our machine, my machine, and it's a homonym for weapon.
Okay, that translator gets
Amazing. Earn your money.
I'm wondering, both in and beyond Murderbot, what you've observed in terms of like groups of robot characters in fiction and how gender is approached in that context. Like you mentioned, the direct but still only defined by two people relationship between like Data and Lol. And for me, I think of this a lot when it comes to like the Transformers IDW comics, depending on the author.
So how we think about groups of robots. in terms
Robot
of-
communities, yeah.
Yeah, robot communities.
I have a bit still tying it into Murderbot, but art and Murderbot's relationship and how it has been defined in fan spaces as an inherently genderless relationship. Because neither of those characters have a gender, and I feel like pre-Murderbot show release, I saw a lot more male/male type of engagement with Murderbot and Art's relationship. I saw a lot of kind of the archetypes that you've seen.
The yaoi tropes.
The yaoi tropes.
Yeah.
And specifically within the context of shipping, more misgendering. And then the Murderbot show released, and now I see more straight ship interaction with Murderbot and art, where art is personified femininely.
I feel like people who haven't had a non-binary and non-binary relationship of any kind have a hard time just envisioning what that looks like. What does this interaction look like if we just drop the gender out of it? And if you haven't been there or have seen it a lot, I feel like some people's imagination really break down, especially if they really got those shipping goggles welded on tight.
Well, and actually, I would love to throw this to Jamie to talk about Becky Chambers robots, because that's where we really see a lot of robot community also.
We do, yeah. And I was just sitting here trying to come up with the details, but yeah, those characters sit in my head as characters, not necessarily their gender, which makes them hard to index for this, oddly enough. But yeah, we see those communities, especially the, I can't remember the in-universe term, hackmons, the people who do a lot of organic modification of themselves, explicit cyborgs, to use the other term. That is not quite what we're talking here. And in those communities, gender is a lot looser too. Because you're taking a more interventionist approach to your own biology, yeah, may as well change the language you're going around it, sure, why not? But for the bots themselves, I mean, a lot of them do come with kind of a default gender based on like the voice that they're given by whatever company created them, or were chosen by on install by a person who did the install, as we see with the ship AIs. But yeah, they tend to be, I see those a lot more loose in those. I'm likely wrong.
I can't remember what, in Picard, there's like a whole planet of data knockoffs, and I can't remember what was going on there gender-wise at all, but does anyone else remember? No, I did not leave much of an impact, apparently.
I will say, when I think about groups of robots, it usually tends to be a dehumanizing thing anyway, because it's like an army, or like a thing where you are there to serve a purpose anyway, and less about like being a person, yeah.
The hauler bots are all non-gendered in Murderbot. Yeah. Jolly baby.
We have so many lovely questions, and we're running short on time. But we're gonna try. We're gonna try.
We're very late on time.
Whatever it's fine.
Speed run.
Bye. Thanks. There were so many of them. There's a yellow circle over here.
I see you.
There's a yellow circle back there.
So, out of curiosity, we were just talking about art and Murderbot. Does anyone else read them as QPR?
Yeah.
Yes.
As what?
Queer platonic relationships.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think they read it that way.
I'm not online, so I don't see how it's ever discussed there. So I'm just curious.
People who are used to queer platonic relationships, I feel like often do that, but people who are not exposed to that, I think, either get out the yaoi goggles or just like, what if this was straighter?
They're bickering as it's great.
It's great. You see, there are two rough sides of Tumblr on, like, specifically within the Murderbot fandom. It's great. It's the innately queer I've been here side, and then this is a fun thing.
Blue circle friend, two headed.
When it comes to writing scenes with non-binary characters that have a they them pronoun, when you're speaking or when you're writing in third person with one character addressing another group of characters, how do you avoid that confusion in their pronoun writing, and how often do you use their name interchangeably with them?
You gotta take it down to the sentence layer.
You absolutely do. Yeah.
Also, I gotta say though, if I have a scene I have she, he, z, and they, it actually makes writing the scene really easy. There's not, I mean, it's the same thing as if you were a guy talking to three guys.
If it's confusing, I add a name, or sometimes I mean, in real life, you sometimes run into this where you're referring to like an individual, and out loud and you realize you have to specify like, I mean Kit, not like, you know, just Kit, not Kit and their spouse, or whatever. And so you can do that in a story as well. Like, it's just, it's like how if you've got like a group of 4 people who use the he, him pronoun, you gotta use the names more, you know, it's.
The same way with like physical characteristic descriptors as well. I feel like I see this more often in fan fiction than published works, like the hair color distinction.
The blonde.
I've seen a lot of the word ravenette, and I don't like it.
There's a term that I got warned as a young author off of what they call burly detective syndrome, which is where you swap, like, you know, said the burly detective when, you know, the next time, you know, there's a tendency to like have the name and then have the descriptor, and like, it can get very cliche.
Also, characters can look at other characters,
Yeah.
right? Like, they turned to Naomi. And, like, now I know who that person is talking to without having to mess around with the pronoun side of things.
You friend.
Going back to the comfort bots, I wanted to ask, do you think that might be a relationship of violence is less transgressive than sex in our society, and a little bit of maybe homophobia that Martha Wells is asking us to work through?
You know, I think, well, maybe. I think Martha Wells is hesitant to write more about comfort bots because it would inherently be a story about rape. Like, I mean, Sec Unit was forced repeatedly to do violence it did not want to do, and comfort bots are used for sex. So, like, yeah, I think that's why.
I do think Martha Wells is asking us to work through that a little bit. Like, hey, I'm humanizing this character. Are you paying attention?
Or I am dehumanizing this character within the protagonist's worldview, and now that needs to be challenged. Are you paying attention?
Yep.
Yeah.
Our last question.
Hopefully this is a good one. Kit has a particular voice. You know, the car.
Oh.
But I don't think it ever gets gendered.
I don't know this.
Oh, this is not right.
I plead born in 1983.
I literally never watched the show, so I have nothing useful to say other than I recognize that reference.
I watched a lot of it, but it was 40 years ago. I wasn't aware of the gender usage at the time, so I'm afraid I can't comment.
You know what? I think I thought Kit was male.
Me too. Well, that was the voice.
Yeah.
I don't remember anyone ever addressing Kit by anything except names. Yeah.
Nobody ever talked about Kit, because like I don't use your pronoun if I'm talking to you. It's if I'm talking
Well, it's
about
not
you.
using the ravenette to say the car.
Okay, I think to answer this question, you need to go to Archive of Our Own and look up my